Squid Game captivated audiences with its brutal portrayal of desperation, survival, and exploitation. But what if the horrors of the series weren't just fiction? From a brutal factory strike to a hidden history of abuse at the brothers' home, the real stories behind Squid Game reveal a harsh reality that still exists today. Let's dive into the chilling truths that inspired this global phenomenon. The Sangyong motor strike, a modern-day fight for survival. In Squid Game, desperate players are pushed to their limits by an uncaring system, risking everything for a chance to escape their financial despair. This mirrors the 2009 Sangyong motor strike, a real-life battle for survival. When Sangyong Motor announced the layoff of more than 2,600 workers during a corporate restructuring, it wasn't just a job loss, it was the destruction of lives. Over 1,000 workers decided to fight back, occupying the factory for 77 grueling days. But rather than negotiate, the government and company cracked down violently. Helicopters rained tear gas from the sky, riot police stormed the premises, and workers were treated like criminals instead of people fighting for dignity. The fallout was devastating. Many workers fell into deep depression, and some tragically took their own lives. The desperation and hopelessness we see in Squid Game reflect the same systemic disregard for human life that played out during the Sangyong motor strike. Debt, the real villain of Squid Game. At its core, Squid Game is about debt. For the players, debt is what traps them in the game and forces them into life or death competition. But this isn't just a fictional concept. It's a reality for millions of South Koreans. South Korea has one of the highest household debt levels in the world. By 2021, the average household owed over twice their annual income. Rising housing prices, stagnant wages, and predatory loan practices have created a society where financial desperation is the norm. In Squid Game, the organizers exploit this desperation, luring players with the promise of wiping away their debts. In real life, payday lenders and predatory financial systems do the same, keeping people trapped in endless cycles of repayment. The brothers' home, a forgotten nightmare. While Squid Game focuses on debt and survival, it also shines a light on society's tendency to dehumanize its most vulnerable. This theme has chilling parallels to one of South Korea's darkest chapters, the brothers' home. Operating during the 1970s and 1980s, the brothers' home was officially a welfare facility for homeless people and orphans. But in reality, it was a prison for anyone society wanted to get rid of. Street children, the disabled, and even innocent people picked off the streets for walking without identification. Inside, over 4,000 detainees were subjected to forced labor, starvation, and brutal abuse. Just like the contestants in Squid Game, they were treated as disposable, their suffering ignored by those in power. The brothers' home scandal was buried for decades, and those responsible face little accountability. It's a haunting reminder of how society marginalizes the powerless, mirroring the treatment of players in Squid Game, parallels between reality and the games. Squid Game is more than a thriller. It's a critique of systems that strip people of their humanity. Take the games themselves, for example. Innocent childhood activities like tug-of-war and marbles are turned into deadly competitions. These games symbolize how life itself becomes a brutal struggle for survival when systems fail to protect the vulnerable. In both the series and reality, those in power exploit the weak, whether through financial systems, physical labor, or entertainment. Hwang Dong-hyuk's vision, a story born of struggle. The creator of Squid Game, Hwang Dong-hyuk, wasn't just imagining the pain and desperation portrayed in the series, he lived it. In the early 2010s, Hwang was a struggling filmmaker drowning in debt. He couldn't sell his scripts, and at one point, he had to sell his laptop just to make ends meet. His experiences, combined with his observations of South Korea's growing wealth gap, inspired Squid Game. For Hwang, the games are a metaphor for the brutal competition of modern life, where survival is stacked against the poor and powerless. The true villain, systemic inequality. The real villain in Squid Game isn't the guards or the games. It's the system. The VIPs who treat human lives as entertainment represent the growing divide between the rich and the poor. In South Korea, The wealthiest 10% control more than half the country's wealth. The rest are left to compete for scraps, just like the players in the game. The real game we're all playing. Squid Game isn't just a series, it's a wake-up call. It forces us to confront a world where systems of inequality, debt, and exploitation push people to their breaking point. The games may end when the credits roll, but for millions of people, the fight for survival is far from over. The question is, what are we going to do about it?